the report coming out of the Philadelphia Eagles being in trouble? And how about the Jets? A fourth different coaching staff on the offense going to part ways with the organization. We'll dissect all of that today on a Wednesday edition of Football with Faria.
It's time for Football with Faria.
You got to get the offense right, and you got to be able to be aggressive. They put up 14 against the secondary. That is driving me up a freaking wall right now.
Now here's your host, Nick Faria.
All right, welcome again inside Football with Faria. It is Nick here to talk to you about the latest news and notes surrounding the National Football League, centering around the Philadelphia Eagles and New York Jets. And luckily enough for all of us, there's plenty of news to talk about when it comes to both teams. Again, if you are watching for the first time, welcome. If you are back, welcome back. We appreciate all the support. Like, comment, share, do whatever you need to do to help grow this channel. Hoping to continue this on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays throughout the later portion of the offseason. And the offseason's about to get started in a big way. The Combine's coming up in less than 2 weeks. NFL free agency in less than a month. So a lot to get to today, a lot to talk about over the next coming weeks. And we hope that you guys will join us as well. But first, let's get to the biggest news and notes for today. We have to talk about what's going on with the New York Jets. 4 different offensive coaches have left the organization for either promotions or lateral moves elsewhere. The latest 2, of course, Mac Brown, an offensive assistant going out to Seattle to coach the tight ends, and Rob Calabrese leaving his comfy quarterback coaching job to coach in Los Angeles with Sean McVay and the Rams. A lot to get to about that. But the one thing that I want to start out with, and again, if you guys are joining for the first time, like, comment, share. You guys want to bring out a comment or question, we'll try to answer them throughout the show. But the one thing I do want to bring up when it comes to this, I feel that Jet fans are getting sucked into this idea where every move made, every potential thing that's happening in the offseason is just misery. Misery, 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 misery. Everyone's upset about any potential move that could possibly happen. And again, if you guys disagree with me, let me know. But ultimately, if we're judging the New York Jets offseason based on what happened at the end of the 2023 season, everyone was saying that major changes need to be made on the offensive side of the football. Major changes. And major changes to some people were changing the offensive coordinator, changing the senior offensive play caller and Todd Downing, getting rid of Keith Carter, getting rid of everyone and starting from scratch. The Jets have essentially said, and the Jets have essentially allowed major changes to happen within the organization and their offensive coaching staff, but not at positions that people may have expected. And people are taking it, I think, the wrong way. When you look at Calabrese and Azani, all these other guys, there are reasons where every single one of them could have been fired at the end of the year. Every single one of them. There was absolute cause and reason to completely start fresh from the offensive coaching staff. There was enough reason to start fresh with the entire coaching staff in general. But that's not what the Jets did. The Jets essentially said, we are not going to worry, and we're going to let some of these other guys explore new opportunities. And that's essentially what it came down to. So Todd Downing, Nathaniel Hackett, all of these guys are going to stay. The main guys are going to stay because continuity with this offense will be key with Aaron Rodgers coming back. But then we're going to change a little bit of the coaching staff in key spots to make sure that our guys are producing at a high level. Everyone agrees that Breece Hall as a running back had a great year, particularly coming off ACL surgery. He was fantastic. But we can't get rid of the fact that Michael Carter didn't perform well, and Dalvin Cook was horrific. It was a horrific signing, and it didn't work out because of Breece Hall's dependability early on in the season. So we can point fingers at, well, it shouldn't have been this coach, it should have been that coach, it should have been this guy, it should have been that guy. That's not how this works. You cannot have your cake and eat it too. And that's a post that I'm writing out today on Sports Illustrated, so keep an eye on that. But Jets fans can't have their cake and eat it too. You cannot be looking for change, and when change happens, the idea is, well, it's rats running away from the ship. That's not what's happening here. What's happening here is, in a lot of different cases, they are leaving for other opportunities. They have gone as far as they can here. They're not getting a promotion, so they will go elsewhere to get their promotion. A perfect example I have is Deuce Staley. Deuce Staley was a running back coach in Philadelphia for years. Started with Chip Kelly, continued with Doug Peterson, and was about to be re-signed with Nick Sirianni. He backed out and said, I want to look at new opportunities. And people will look and say, well, Deuce Staley, he's had great run in Philadelphia because of the offensive line and the great running backs they had. But ultimately, when you look at him as a coach, everyone respects him as a coach. He's been in the running for multiple head coaching jobs. But no one can deny the very simple fact that he was going nowhere in Philadelphia. They gave him head coaching interviews, and they never were going to hire him. They never were going to. And that could be the case for every single one of these guys. Is Calabrese going to get a head coaching job by being the quarterback coach with Aaron Rodgers? Maybe not so, particularly when the last few have not exactly worked out. The same goes for Azzani. The same goes for all of these different guys that are looking to get their bearings elsewhere. These are position coaches that are changing. This isn't rats leaving a ship. These are position coaches changing. And people will look to and say, well, Nick, it's not just the 4 offensive coaches that are leaving. 2 executives have already left. We talked about Alexander, director of player personnel, leaving. Rex Hogan, parting ways. But there's a fundamental difference, first off, between coaches and executives. And the second piece, and I kind of already dissected this a while back, but Alexander leaving, he left for a promotion. Rex Hogan was a mutual parting of ways. He wasn't going to get a GM job here. So he said, you know what? It's fine. We'll head out. People will look at the leaks. People will look at this. Everything under the sun. But ultimately, there were other issues outside that just allowed them to part ways. It's not rats jumping from a ship. This is a natural process of the offseason. Coaches leave for other gigs. Position coaches leave for other gigs. People kind of forget, and again, I use them as an example because I've seen this right away, but when Philadelphia won the Super Bowl in 2017, they went through a lot of different coaching changes. Quarterback coach, offensive coordinator, but the one that people forget the most is the defensive line coach. I'm blanking on his name, but he was gone and parted ways with the team after the season, and he went elsewhere. Is that a sense of that coach running and jumping off the ship? Of course not. It's because he's looking for new opportunities, and lateral moves will not help them in some ways. Other ways, it's the only way for you to get even close to the level of just viewership for your resume. Another example is Eric Bieniemy. Eric Bieniemy was the offensive coordinator with the Kansas City Chiefs during their first couple of titles. What ended up happening, guys, Bieniemy leaves, and he goes and is an offensive coordinator with the Washington Commanders. Why did he go for a lateral job instead of just waiting to be a head coach? Because he wasn't getting a head coaching job. He wasn't getting the offers he wanted, so he went elsewhere to show that he can be a competent play caller. And guess what? What did we learn? He may not be that guy. And that's okay. But you can't discredit offensive coaches for leaving and then in the same breath say, well, this is a reflection on Robert Saleh's staff because all these guys want to leave. You can't have it both ways. You just can't. So as I go through this, and again, you guys have a comment, you guys have a question, let me know. I don't look at the Jets' offensive changes in their coaching staff as this really big deal. I can't. Because this happens all the time. It happens with every organization. It's ridiculous to even think that it could be more because it consistently happens everywhere. When is the do you guys know who the oldest offensive coordinator is with his team? I looked this up a couple weeks ago. I can't remember the name, but the longest tenured offensive coordinator with his original team was hired in 2021, 3 years ago. There's so much change now with coaches that it's irrelevant. It becomes irrelevant. Okay, you lost your quarterback coach. Well, you still have Aaron Rodgers, and you still have two major offensive minds in the room in Todd Downing and Nathaniel Hackett. They may not have to fill the position, and they could just add quarterback coach to Todd Downing's resume. And I think if I were a betting man, that's probably where they're going to go. It's just an added title change because Downing is respected by Aaron Rodgers. So I had those conversations with Rodgers at the beginning of the offseason when he was healthy and prepared for the 2023 season. I wouldn't be surprised if Downing takes on pass game coordinator and quarterback coach. Wouldn't shock me at all. So for those of you saying, oh, this is terrible, this is another sign that Robert Saleh is just a terrible coach, we're getting rid of the wrong people, relax. Relax. It's February 21st. We don't even know who the assistant coaches are going to be. We know a couple. Sean Jefferson, I think he's an upgrade at wide receiver coach. They're going to upgrade the position in free agency. There's very little to assume that, the Azani leaving the staff is a bad thing because they're going to be better. So why is it good for one but not the other? You can't have it both ways. You can't have it both ways. And that's what I really want to stress today. That's what I want to stress. Guys, everyone wants to talk about, rats jumping from a ship. That's all it is. It's not. It's not. Because if it was, Nathaniel Hackett, Downing, all would probably be leaving. Top assistants would be leaving. The defensive staff would be leaving. If this was truly rats jumping from a ship, the entire defensive staff would be leaving and searching for better options. That's just where we're at. Mindy Adam, honestly, any of these coaching staff losses detrimental? Not a single one. And quite frankly, any coaching change they made this offseason was not going to be detrimental. And this is kind of what I've been telling you guys for the last month and a half. This is the time to make these changes. Coaching staffs change consistently from year to year, whether it's defensive line, whether it's offensive line, quarterback coach, running back coach, receiver coach. These are all interchangeable pieces. All of it's interchangeable. It's not the end of the world. It's not the be all end all of coaching. It's just not. Mindy, again, addition by subtraction. I wouldn't even call it addition by subtraction. I really wouldn't. I think this is just natural. It is just the natural scope of the NFL. Coaches want to leave and get new opportunities. They want to show that they can win in different places. Show that they can win elsewhere. That's what Eric Bieniemy did. That's what Deuce Staley did. All these coaches leave and try to get a better footing for a head coaching job. Some of it works out. Some of it doesn't. Bieniemy's the example there. So don't get too crazy on me that this is going on because it's just not worth it. It's just not worth it at all. The one other question that I wanted to bring up when it comes to the Jets today is the options to replace Calabrese. I think most people understand, and I think a lot of people, from what I saw on Twitter, from a lot of the conversations that I've had, there's been a lot of animosity towards Calabrese in general. People didn't like him because of the Zach Wilson and not being able to develop. But ultimately, this was a smart decision because letting him walk, and again, this isn't him being fired. He took another job, like every other guy in this league. You don't see Texans and Steeler coaches freaking out because, oh my God, the quarterback coach is leaving. It's an indictment on Robert Saleh. There's a lot of things Robert Saleh needs to improve on. his coaching staff, some of his coaching staff leaving, it's not one of them. It's just not one of them. This is the point that I'm trying to make. There's the ultra negative, ultra positive. It's somewhere in the middle. This isn't even an ultra positive thing. It's just, it happens. You lose your quarterback coach. He goes off. He wants to be somewhere more comfortable, closer to the scheme that he runs. So he's going to do that and go to Los Angeles. No need to worry. No ifs, ands, or buts. It's not an indictment on anyone. It's just a natural coaching move. And we talk about natural coaching moves and natural playing and concerns. But the one thing I wanted to bring up before I go into draft talk with the Jets, I wanted to bring this up today because he's been just absolutely rambling on Twitter today. But for those of you Jet fans that still remember Craig Carton from WFAN, he started running his mouth yesterday about the Philadelphia Eagles and stating essentially that there are rumors that the reason why the Eagles collapsed down the stretch is because of off-the-field concerns that cannot be fixed, and there will be a significant trade coming this offseason from the organization. And again, before I come back to the Jets, I need to talk about this because the rumor was not even 24 hours old before Adam Schefter went out there on 97.5 The Fanatic in Philadelphia, for those of you that don't know, and essentially said that this rumor was unfounded. He spoke to people in the organization. They had no idea what they're talking about. Apparently, there is a rumor of someone cheating on another player's wife in the locker room, and that's what caused the turmoil. If Adam Schefter is telling you that it's unfounded, it's unfounded. And the one thing I said on Twitter that some people got upset with me about is, who am I going to believe? Who are you guys going to believe? And maybe this is the modern media where if you have a report, people are going to listen because, well, he could be right, because how do we know? Who do you trust? A guy that's been arrested for fraud, or the most popular plugged-in reporter in the NFL today? There's another report out there from Derek Gunn, NBC Sports Philadelphia, saying that Jalen Hurts, he just got overwhelmed by his contract and being pulled in every which way. Nick Sirianni was being an immature brat on the sidelines when Big Dom was suspended for the regular season. That is a founded report from someone who has consistently broke news inside the NovaCare complex. Am I going to get on people and say, oh my God, the Eagles are going to combust because Craig Carton heard a rumor that someone cheated with another one's wife in the locker room? Oh, wait, but Adam Schefter discredited it, so it's irrelevant. That's what we're on about, guys. If you guys are looking for media substance and looking for breaking news media, the number one guy in the NFL is Adam Schefter. In case anyone needed a reminder, it's Adam Schefter. If Schefter says, no, it didn't happen, it didn't happen. Sorry to break it to you. If you guys are looking for people panicking about the Eagles, this isn't going to be it, because it's ridiculous that Craig Carton even tried to say something. Yeah, again, here, Mindy, Craig Carton, the gambling felon, there's a trustworthy guy. Exactly. He's got a show on FS1. These shows sell themselves. It's all it is. You screw people out of money, all that other stuff. Yes. It's all it is. His report today, or yesterday, because the show happened yesterday, is nothing more than a guy looking for ratings. You want to talk to me about the Derek Gunn report about Jalen Hurts and him being twisted every which way and having to grow and mature after a big contract? I'm all for it. I'm still not even worried, but I'm all for it. Nick Sirianni needs to mature. All for it. That's a legitimate report from a trusted news source. I'm not trusting Craig Carton as a news source. Sorry to break it to everybody. I saw it. I heard one person get into an argument about it on Twitter. I almost lost my mind. Couldn't respond. I almost lost my mind on it. Completely ridiculous. Completely ridiculous. But again, I do want to talk about the draft, free agency, because it is coming up. We got free agency in under a month. We have the draft in about 2 months, or in April, in January, February, March, April. So 2 months. I'm hoping for a full-time job by then, but we'll see what happens. Mandy, congratulations on doubling subscribers the past month. Guys, I don't even know. I'm just thankful for those of you that show up, ask questions. I love the conversation we all have at the end of the day to help my schedule as I try to apply for jobs, because I'm sure everyone knows applying to jobs is essentially a full-time job. I think the shows are going to be Monday, Wednesday, Friday from now on. I have a scheduled show on Friday at 5 p.m. This week, hoping to attract some guests as well. But I will say, as we turn to the draft and we turn to some of these needs for the Jets in free agency and everything else, the one thing that I think people are kind of losing sight on is when you look at the Jets, they have on Spotrac, it says $7 million the last time I checked. On Over the Cap, it says $1 million after the voided contracts. Whichever one you believe. There is room for New York to build about $50 to $60 million in cap space with restructures and releases. I broke this down on a post on Sports Illustrated. It's going to be on my Twitter feed, guys. If you guys want to check it out, I go through the entire piece. But there's a way to build close to $40, $50, $60 million in cap space. And the one thing that I'll say is if you look at the Jets roster, and a lot of people might disagree with me, but when you look at the Jets roster, it's really not one that needs the high-priced free agent at every position. You need a top tackle, you need a number 2 receiver, and you're probably going to have to pay hefty money for that. I go into the David Bakhtiari news about if the Jets should give him money and how much money. But you're going to have to pay for a left tackle. You're going to have to pay for a number 2 wide receiver. But when you have $50 to $60 million in cap space, it's okay to give that kind of money. Guys, the cap, we heard this on a report earlier this week about the cap jumping from something like $220 million to $250. The cap is going to explode over the next couple of seasons. It's going to explode with the TV contracts, with revenue. Revenue's never been higher in the National Football League. So it's not so much about overpaying for top talent. It's never going to be that case. And the one name I keep turning back to is T. Higgins, because Higgins is the number 1 receiver free agent-wise on my board. If I have a board, a list of the top free agent wide receivers, I'm going to have an article out about that tomorrow. But if you look, top receiver free agents, Higgins is at the top. He is the antithesis of Alvin Harper. I don't know if you guys were around in the 90s. I wasn't, but I'm like I said, I'm an NFL historian. Alvin Harper was the number 2 receiver for the Dallas Cowboys during their dynasty run. And Harper signed a massive free agent deal with the Falcons and just imploded because the Falcons asked him to be a number 1 receiver and he couldn't do it. Couldn't do it. So ultimately, is T. Higgins and Alvin Harper? No way, because he's a quality number 1 receiver. He is the guy you trust to pair with Garrett Wilson. And there's other guys like that in free agency too. Mike Evans, it seems like he's waiting to see what happens with Baker Mayfield. We have all these other guys that are going to be available. I like Tyler Boyd as a slot receiver for the Jets. There's other guys that the Jets can target that are number 2, number 3 options at the wide receiver position. There's certainly those kind of guys. The receiver, you can pay a little bit extra and get him. You can get a quality backup quarterback for a really good price because the cap's gone up, because you're allowed to do these things. I continue to say, I think Ryan Tannehill is probably the best bet for the Jets because of his relationship with Todd Downing and his experience with Keith Carter. Bringing in Ryan Tannehill makes the most sense overall. But I talked about earlier this week about Sam Howell potentially trading a late-round pick for the Commanders' late-round quarterback. That's a possibility. Zach Wilson swap with him, that's certainly on the table. Sam Howell looked tremendously better than Zach Wilson did the entire season. And people will look at him falling off at the end of the year, but the end of the year wasn't defenses figuring him out. I think it was mostly to do with the fact that defense is adjusted and he is learning the game. This is his first full year as a starter. Remember, Aaron Rodgers said you can't cancel these quarterbacks out so early in the process. Look at the Packers. The Packers could have thrown everything away. And now they're a playoff team again and looking like a serious contender in the NFC thanks to Jordan Love. That's the case here. The Jets are going to get a backup quarterback. People may panic about what kind, the type of quarterback, but ultimately I look at any of the top guys. Tannehill. I like Tyrod Taylor in this offense. I talked about Howell. These guys are quality backups that you can trust for a couple of starts. And I think Jet fans need to realize and sort of change their expectations a little bit. Not to say, oh, this quarterback needs to be able to win 8 games a year. This quarterback needs to be able to keep an offense afloat for 2 games. That is the lifeblood of a backup quarterback. That is the lifestyle of one. That's just the simple case. Nothing changes about that conversation. It's just a matter of, hey, a backup quarterback, his shelf life, 2 weeks. You saw that with Josh Dobbs. You kind of saw it a little bit with Joe Flacco, too. Boy, when Flacco played poorly, it looked bad, boys. It looked terrible. So, no, it's not, okay, you have to get him for 8 weeks and hope that he can stay afloat while the team, if the team were to lose Aaron Rodgers for an extended period of time. That's not the debate here. It's not the debate. Got a call in from Johnny. Johnny, welcome back again, man. Happy
Hey,
to have
Nick, man.
Let's talk.
Hey, first and foremost, I appreciate you saying that about the whole quarterback thing because it is the truth. If we were to lose Aaron Rodgers again, it's the season all over again. A backup, that's exactly what it is. Just get us between those maybe 2 to 3 games, right? And have us win at least 2, maybe 1.
Yeah.
Hopefully all 3 games and keep us in where we need to go ahead and be. And I wish that a lot of the Jets fan nation would understand that and think that, Zach was never supposed to be the guy this year. He was supposed to be redshirted. He was never supposed to be able to go ahead and put this stuff. Did JD drop the ball and not bring in a vet in?
Absolutely.
Probably.
And that's been the one thing I've pounded the table on. He could have brought one in. And again, I Johnny, you've heard me say this before. Joe Douglas has done a lot of good things.
Correct.
A lot of good things. But last season, he screwed up. He needed to be aggressive if they were going to be competitive. If they weren't going to be competitive, he did exactly what he was supposed to do, keep the team afloat, keep the team competitive, and just punt to 2024.
But this whole conversation with everybody talking about, Jacoby Brissett or Josh Dobbs or, I don't know, the freaking boogeyman would have saved the season. It's false. It's these expectations of these. There's a reason why Jacoby Brissett is a backup quarterback. It's a reason why Josh Dobbs is that, and to say whatever, but Zach Wilson will be a backup somewhere, unless he could get it right up here. He has the talent to do those things. I think none of us has ever said that he would not have that, but we'll see, man. And a lot of the newer stuff, man, I'm more into the whole free agency talk, right? I know the draft is coming, but I think that in free agency, we could hit it out of the park if we hit on the positions that we need. It'll be a lot easier if we fill the line now. So then when we go ahead and when draft time comes along, we could go ahead and pick a Fuaga or back up and get yourself a Mims or a Latham. I'm big on Latham and Fuaga. That's just my cup of tea on there, but I'm more intrigued of getting more working capital, right, for the Jets organization itself. Getting a second round would be huge. Then you can worry about a wide receiver. But with the rumblings of maybe Corey Davis coming back, and that's what I was going to talk to you about, right? And what is your biggest take on that? And I would love if we could get Mike Evans and all that, but I'm being realistic. I don't think that happens. I see us more of a Calvin Ridley. I see more of a Sutton if we do a trade in regards of that. But I wanted to take your biggest take on that. And I think we do lose Huff. Huff is going to be gone, unfortunately, right? But just wanted to throw all those things at you really quickly. And, hey, bro, I appreciate the stuff you're putting out here, man, of everybody that, I mean, no shade to nobody else or nothing like that at all, but you're spitting a lot of more actual facts of what's going on right now, even though we're at a dead time. And I get that, but I appreciate it, bro.
I appreciate it, Johnny. Thank you. I'm going to get to all that stuff in a little bit. But for guys that are here, that are jumping on, I appreciate all of you guys that have commented and jumped on the show. It's greatly appreciated. The one thing that I'll say is the thing that I'm learning with the Jets and the Eagles as well is they're the big markets, so they're always going to be in the news. There's always something to talk about. Most coaching staff changes are going to be solved by this time. Jets have filled most of their coaching staff positions. And then, oh, look, offensive assistant and quarterback coach are leaving the team this week. So I think a lot of people were a little surprised at the lateness of it. But again, it's not to say over the top. Not to say any of that's over the top. We're going to get to free agency a little bit. I do have a question from Dane. Faria is broaching ROH status. I have no idea what that means. Want to post that out there? If anyone can help me out, thank you. But the one thing that I'll say in terms of free agency, and I do agree with Johnny, the offensive line needs to be established, and they need to address the position in free agency. The question is, how much do they want to invest? They can go out and get a guy like, I'm trying to say, like the top guy right now is Tyron Smith, Dallas Cowboys left tackle. He's an all-pro, future first ballot Hall of Famer. But are you going to pay him $10 million to be your left tackle for a couple of years? And you don't even know if you're going to be able to bring him in here in the first place. We want to talk about David Bakhtiari and his injury problems. You want to look at Tyron Smith and his problems? This guy's been hurt for at least 6 years now. Bakhtiari's dealt with a lot of injuries, and he comes with a lot of problems and a lot of baggage. Tyron Smith's on another level, guys. When he's on, but he is rarely on because he always gets hurt. He has back problems. He has degenerative knee problems now. He's in his 30s. I wouldn't pay him $10 million to be the left tackle for next season. I would pay Bakhtiari $6-7 million to be the left tackle if it means saving $3 extra million for a backup running back, or a little bit extra money for T. Higgins, or a little bit extra money at other positions along the offensive line. Not saying that Bakhtiari is better than Tyron Smith. He has his injury concerns. He has pretty much the same degenerate knee problems. They're essentially the same player in my mind, except one's a first ballot Hall of Famer and one is going into the Hall of Fame maybe after a couple of years. They're both excellent players, and they both will solidify the offensive line when healthy. But the question is, when will they be healthy? That's all it comes down to. If the Jets were to get either of those guys, check at the left tackle. And I think if there's going to be a strategy for the Jets this offseason, we know they're going after wide receiver. We know that they're going after the backup quarterback role. Take a note for you guys out there. Take a note of what they address first on the offensive line. If they address the guard and backup center position first, that means they're addressing the depth in free agency. That means they're going to focus more on the overall depth. So they're probably not going to go all in on a top tackle. And if that would be the case, if that's the case, I think logically, there is a path for the Jets to trade up in the first round and get Olu Fashanu, get Joe Alt, that kind of thing. I said before, a couple of weeks ago, if the Jets are serious about being contenders in 2024 and 2025, they need to do everything in their power, like Johnny said, to get into the second round of this draft, but also to get the tackle you want. And we know that they love Talise Fuaga. We know that Olu Fashanu is excellent, and we know Joe Alt is excellent. If any of these 3 tackles were here last year, they are probably a top 3 overall pick. That's how good these guys are. So Jet fans that may feel a little discouraged at this point understand that no matter what happens in free agency, they are coming away with one of the top tackles in this class. And that should make everyone happy. But if they go depth at the position, I want to sort of bring it back to this. But if the Jets go depth on the offensive line in free agency, that tells me they are trying to trade up for Fashanu. That's the logical answer. Because if they addressed left tackle, if they were to bring in Bakhtiari or Tyron Smith and say, this is going to be our left tackle and we're going to get the best player available at 10, then everyone and their mother should know that Fuaga is going to be picked with the 10th overall pick. Kind of like last year with Philadelphia, how they were sitting pretty at 10, and everyone knew in free agency they had addressed the number 3 receiver position. They had addressed, They addressed the linebacker position. They added in some corners. They brought in a safety. So all they were going to do was play best player available, but they needed defensive line help. So everyone and their mother knew if Jalen Carter was going to fall, Philadelphia is going to trade up and get him. If the Jets solidify the left tackle position or just bring depth into the mix, you know where they are going in the draft, whether it's by trading up or staying at 10 and taking Fuaga. By almost every single mock draft we've seen, Jeremiah has put it out 3 times. Mel Kiper has put it out once. If you look at the math, the Jets are going to come away with either Fuaga or Fashanu. And that's great. If you're the Jets fan base, you are extremely happy with that. If not, something else might have happened. Let's sit here and say that they bring in Bakhtiari and they sign Trent Brown. And Brown's going to be the right tackle. Bakhtiari is going to be on the left. And you don't even need a tackle in the draft in the first round. And you go best player available and you need a wide receiver, then you take Odunze. But you can tell when that happens based on what they do in free agency. And the reports that I've heard, the stuff that I have heard, it's better overall. And I think the Jets are going to be aggressive in free agency, but how aggressive is going to be the bigger question. Signing a guy of value at the right price makes a lot of sense. Tannehill for the right price, Minshew for the right price. I don't think they're going to spend $10 million on the backup quarterback role for this year because it's just not good value overall on building a team. The cap's going up. I still don't want to spend $10 million on a backup. And this is coming from a fan of a team that addresses the backup quarterback more than any other. You don't pay a backup quarterback $10 million. You get him for the right value. And there's going to be plenty of value quarterbacks available that can win 1 or 2 games for you in 2024. It's just the way it is. Question from Snowball here. Why will Bakhtiari suddenly get healthy with the Jets? It's not, and Snowball, great question, but it's not that he will get healthy all of a sudden. It's not that the Jets are banking on him getting healthy. Because if you look, and I want you guys to do this, look at the free agent class of tackles. Just look at it. It's on Spotrac. Just look at the list of free agent tackles. Every single one of them has injury concerns. Every single one of them. And I'll change that. Every single one of them worth starting money. It's just, they're all hurt. They are free agents for a reason. That is just where we are in the process. It's where we are. It's not to say that these guys are bad. It's not to say that they're good. It's they have injury concerns. Every single one of them. Tyron Smith, Bakhtiari when he gets released, Trent Brown. These guys are all hurt. There's reason for that. And from Lake Jets fan, it's right here. Brown scares me. His injury history was rough too. He had the wrong surgery that messed up his knee. Got it corrected and set out for the season to heal up. They're all hurt. Every single free agent tackle is hurt. He has injury concerns, which is why, if you're the Jets, you bring in these guys. You bring in Bakhtiari. You bring in Connor McGovern back on nice deals, veteran, helpful deals for the organization, but you bring them in and essentially say, you give us all the games that you can play, and we're going to have a backup ready for you when they go down. This is why I say Mekhi Becton, I don't think they're going to let Mekhi Becton walk. I think they're going to come to an agreement to bring him back on a 1-year prove-it deal. Because if they bring Bakhtiari in, you better make sure you have a replacement for him if he were to go down. And Mekhi Becton as a swing tackle, I'd take that. They still have Carter Warren. Guys, I said this earlier in camp. I said it throughout the season. I was impressed with Carter Warren. I spoke to him, I think, more than any other reporter this year. Every single week I wanted to talk to him. He's a great kid. He's knowledgeable. He's learning the game. He learned from Dwayne Brown. He's a legitimate tackle. And if he develops like I think he can develop, he can be a very solid starter to backup option. It's not just, oh, you don't want to give money to a starter because what if he gets hurt? It's, we know he could, so let's make sure we're protected in case he does. Think about it that way. It's not, oh, we're going to overspend on guys that are hurt. It's we're going to spend on guys when they are healthy, are really freaking good. And then if they're hurt, we have the backup plan ready. They still have Max Mitchell. They still have Carter Warren. Those are quality backup tackles. I still like what I saw from Carter Warren. I didn't like what I saw from the other guys. But that's a solid tackle group. That's a solid group. Another comment from Jet fan. Becton is an issue with his attitude and maturity. He hurt his ankle and that then was awful this year. Well, guys, I'm going to say this. And I said this on Jake Asman's show when it happened. I said it on Twitter and everyone kind of went after me for it. When you are a tackle, footwork is incredibly important. I used to play the position in Pop Warner. Granted, it was Pop Warner. Not going to beat anyone at 110 pounds going into high school. But when you're a left tackle, footwork is incredibly important. And if you're not 100% on your ankle, you are setting yourself up for failure. This is why I said when Mekhi Becton went down, if he's hurt, you have to sit him. Because early on in the year, I thought he had a very strong start to the season. I didn't think he was as bad as many people wanted to talk about. I thought he was good in the running game, particularly when Elijah Vera Tucker was playing with him. You saw that chemistry being built on the right side. But then AVT went down, and he went through 5 different guards, and then he had the ankle injury. And then he tried to play on the ankle injury because he was trying to do what was best for the team, and he couldn't play as well. It's not to say that Mekhi is a bad guy or a bad teammate, because that's not the case. I think if you talk to Aaron Rodgers, if you talk to people inside and outside the organization, they see a great kid that's still learning the game. But I liked what I saw at times from him, particularly when the starters were out there. I can't judge him the same way late in the year when he had terrible penalties and terrible reps in the pass rush. Guys, I want you to look at it and take a look. I'm going to do a film session on this at some point this offseason. Look at the difference between when Mekhi Becton was playing a right tackle with Elijah Vera Tucker and when he was playing left tackle with Laken Tomlinson. And this isn't to say that Laken Tomlinson is the epicenter of all that is poor with the New York Jets. That's not what I'm saying. But there's a big difference between when you're working with chemistry with specific offensive linemen throughout the year. The Jets' offensive line was not bad at the beginning of the year. It wasn't. They weren't the reason why Aaron Rodgers got hurt. They weren't the reason why Zach Wilson was taking some really bad sacks. And we saw that a couple film sessions ago with the Patriots. There were some horrific sacks that Zach Wilson took. That's not Mekhi's fault. That's not Laken Tomlinson's fault. That's the quarterback. So I don't think getting rid of Mekhi Becton solves all your problems. And the Jets are unique in this situation where they have plenty of depth at tackle, Max Mitchell, Carter Warren, where they can let Becton walk. They can let him walk and not have any problem with it. I personally think it would make a lot of sense. He's got a good relationship with Rodgers. He's got a good relationship with a lot of people in the organization. But it makes sense for the Jets to bring him back on a one-year prove-it deal to back up a player like Bakhtiari. So that way, and yes, you could say, well, that's just injury prone on injury prone. Guys, there's no other option. There's no free agent in this class that has no issues with health. Every single one of them has health problems. Every single one of them. And I say that now, I'm like, oh my God, they're dying. No, it's you guys know what I'm talking about. Snowball with the question on Mekhi. What was the reason for all Mekhi's penalties this season? I think it's a mix of a couple of things, Snowball. I think it is literally, and again, the objective side. I am not taking Mekhi Becton's side. I'm not against Mekhi. I'm just telling you the way it is. This guy didn't play for 2 years. If people were expecting him to come out and dominate at an all-pro, Pro Bowl level like he was in his rookie season, I think they were going to set themselves up for failure. I really do, because there was no future where Mekhi Becton was going to come out and look like a top tackle this season. It just never was going to happen. We needed him to develop and grow. The Jets needed him to develop and grow and show maturity and show improvement in his game as he was getting his feet under him at the NFL level again. But then what happened? AVT went down. Dwayne Brown went down. He had to change positions the first 2 weeks of the season. AVT, Brown, McGovern, let's see, who else? Xavier Newman-Johnson. I mentioned McGovern already, but who are the other guys? Billy Turner got hurt. Wes Schweitzer got hurt. What continuity were you building on this offensive line? How could you hope any of them look good? This is why I say a performance like Joe Tippmann had this year should be immensely impressive for the Jets. Guys, they didn't have anyone. Everyone was rotating in. They had 12 different offensive line combinations, and Joe Tippmann looked as well as he did. You've got the center of the future. Easy center of the future. Because he showed, even with all the tumultuous season they had, he can still be a dependable offensive lineman. Check. That's a great draft pick. And we want to get on him. We want to get on Joe Douglas for his draft last year. I think he nailed the Joe Tippmann pick. I think he nailed it. But when we look at the offensive line, we look at all the problems that they've had. A lot of it, people will look at Keith Carter and how he's coaching and they're not ready or preparing the team in practice and they're going too hard in practice and all these injuries are just piling up. Some of it is luck. Some of it is luck, guys. They lost 3 centers in one game. That's not Keith Carter. That's not Robert Saleh. That's not even the turf at MetLife. That's just luck. And unfortunately for Jet fans, you guys had some pretty shitty luck the last decade. And it's some of the worst that I've ever seen. I thought Philadelphia was bad when I was a kid growing up. Holy Jesus. Just atrocious. But again, and I think this is where Jet fans, and I begin to understand you guys in the way of, you guys just want results. You guys just want wins. However they come, you want wins. And I can respect that. It's the one thing I appreciate about you guys, because all you're asking for is wins. You don't care how they're done. You're just looking for wins. But in that sort of argument, if you're looking for wins, that means putting out the best team on the field at all times. And if you're looking to do that and looking at this free agent class, You have to go out there and get the Mike Evans, the Calvin Ridley, the T. Higgins at receiver. And then you need to take a long, hard look at your offensive line and say, okay, who do we go and get? Who are we going to attack knowing full well that they have injury concerns? And people will look at Jonah Williams and say, hey, not the same, but he doesn't have as many injury problems as some of these other guys. But his thing is an effectiveness issue. So if you're the Jets, you know full well you need to solidify the offensive line, and there's not a lot of healthy offensive linemen available in free agency. If that's going to be the case, then you need to go out there and you need to get a top tackle and ride him as long as you possibly can, regardless of the injury concerns, because there's just no other option. You're not going to go out there to start the 2024 season with Carter Warren as your left tackle and Talise Fuaga as your right. I think that's just setting yourself up for failure. And I like Carter Warren a lot. I've said it today. I've said it multiple weeks. I like Carter Warren a lot. I think he needs to develop more. Maybe he comes out and he has a great training camp and they signed David Bakhtiari and everyone's looking at it and saying Carter Warren is outplaying David Bakhtiari. That's a great problem to have. It's a great problem to have. But I'm not going to sit here and tell you that Warren should get the starting job at left tackle. That's not going to be the case. It's not going to be the case, and it should not be the case. Because you're just hurting yourself in the long term. That's all you're doing. I'm going to stay on for a couple more minutes. We're going to try to answer all your questions. Again, Football with Faria. Having a great conversation here, guys. Appreciate everything. From Lake Jets fan again, mentioned a comment earlier. It's about the interior line. Browns survived because they had their guards in center. Please cut Lakin. I'm not going to sit here and say they should cut Lakin Tomlinson. I know there's going to be some cap relief, but I think they are in a better situation if they just restructure his deal, get most of it into a bonus, and see if you can let him walk in free agency next year and pair him with a legitimate tackle that he works with. The chemistry between a left guard and a left tackle is incredibly important. You look at the relationship Jordan Mailata and Landon Dickerson in Philadelphia have. Jordan Mailata is not from Philadelphia. He came from Australia. We all know the story. Undrafted, seventh-round player, never played football in his life. Was a rugby player the entire time, and he was basically developed into an all-pro. But he has no friends here. He has no family here. So he essentially is tied to the hip with Landon Dickerson. That's who you should want in a left tackle, left guard combo. So I ask you guys, and for Lakin Tomlinson's perspective, who's his Jordan Mailata? Who's his friend to his left that he can grow with and develop with? There's no one. If it was Becton, it'd be great, but Becton was on an ankle injury the late part of the year. Question from Dano. Off the top of your head, which franchises of the AFC do you consider to be in money trouble? Like, who is in jeopardy of cutting talent? The couple names that I think of, I think Kansas City is obviously going to be one of them. I know they're in a very good cap situation, but they have to pay Chris Jones. L'Jarius Sneed is going to be probably a free agent. He's going to be available. Kansas City is a team to look at. Baltimore is a team that I think is going to be in a little bit of trouble. You look at some of the guys that they have are letting walk in free agency. Patrick Queen, Justin Madubuike, who I think is going to get franchise tagged, but still. Kevin Zeitler. These guys are really good Pro Bowl players, and Baltimore does not have the money to get them in. Baltimore, I think, is in big trouble. And honestly, to a point, I think the Buffalo Bills are as well. Buffalo, I was surprised with their turnaround. I thought they were going to sink to the bottom of the league this year because of a natural struggle after getting to the playoffs so many years. You eventually just see it all blow up. I thought this was the year for Buffalo. I think it could happen next year. I think Buffalo could be in trouble. I think the Dolphins could be in trouble. Guys, I said this before. I think the Jets could seriously win the AFC East with 11 wins next year. The schedule is going to be a little lighter. You're not going to play the Chiefs. You're not going to have to play the NFC East. You could theoretically look at this schedule and say 11 wins and winning the division, because I don't trust the Miami Dolphins. And as much as the Buffalo Bills have essentially owned the Jets at times in Buffalo, I would take the Jets with Aaron Rodgers at quarterback. And this is what it all comes back to, guys. We're going to stay on for just a couple more minutes. But I guess if I have a closing remark, it's this. All these questions. What should the Jets do in free agency? What's going to happen here with the coaching staff? Our coaching staff stinks. Our executive stinks. We don't know how to draft. Who's your quarterback? Who's your quarterback? In the National Football League now, if you have a top 5, top 10 quarterback, you're fine. You're going to be in the running for the playoffs. And then it comes down to the rest of the team. Put it this way. Philadelphia this year completely blew up down the stretch. Is Jalen Hurts still a top 10 quarterback? Absolutely. Absolutely. They won 11 games and everyone was exhausted on that team against the hardest schedule in football. There you go. There you go. Jalen Hurts is a top 10 quarterback. Philadelphia is probably going to be competitive next year. Is Dak Prescott a top 10 quarterback? I would put him outside the top 10, but they're going to still be competitive next year. The Bills, the Dolphins, the Chiefs. As much as this team, as much as this league is of parity, it all comes down to the starting quarterback. And if you have Aaron Rodgers on your team, you're going to be in the conversation. Dane, I'll bring you on here for the last call before we run up shop. But how's everything going, man?
Hey, it's good, man. How you been?
Bored.
Dude, I was just thinking, like, looking at the calendar, it's honestly, we're closer to our Patriots game in the rearview mirror than we are to the draft. It's kind of scary. Like, we still have 2 months away. And that's what I was talking with Johnny the other day. And he kind of was talking about that as well. We do have to maximize the free agency window because it's literally going to happen so fast. And everything you said, man, we need several pieces. And that's the thing I'm struggling with is having one guy and be able to, like, recruiting one starter is a job in itself. But
yeah.
I think what we are going to, it's basically what I'm trying to say is it's a 2-year job is building that O-line. Now, can we do it in one? We're going to have to. I think we are very lucky at the guys that we do have and their adaptability. Because like you said, AVT, he can go. Well, in my opinion, AVT, like I kind of plotted it out. If we were to recruit a starter in free agency, like we can have AVT on the outside, say Tippmann. I put Tippmann at guard because I think that it's easier for us to find a starting center than it will be to find either 2 guards or 2 tackles. So if you put, say in that tampering window, I recruit a center, put him in the middle, then I put Tippmann next to him and AVT on the outside. I have 2 spots on the left to fill. We could get a cheap Mackay and we could get a cheap Mackay and Lakin per se. I'm just saying that fills out the line, but I don't want him to do that. But the adaptability is what I'm saying. That's 3 starters right there. Locked in center. It's not going to cost us much. You can draft a tackle. Everybody is focusing on how hard it's going to be to get a starting caliber 5 guys together. I don't think that's our problem. We have it more than halfway done, especially when you count in we could bring back Dwayne. We have Max still developing, Carter, like you said, possibly Mackay at a cheaper rate, Xavier Newman, all guys that got good snaps. bring in a free agent, draft another, maybe take another guy in the fourth. The thing is, you got to keep them healthy, and that's where this whole thing. There's nothing we can do this off season about that, short of like burning the turf. But I just wish we as a fan base collectively could focus less about we got to get this guy, we got to get that guy, he's got to be there, because that you could do it 9,000 ways. It's not going to make a difference at all if you don't keep them healthy. And like I said, I'd like to praise the fact that the guys we have gotten, I don't know if it was plotted out or not, but the fact that they are adaptable, because if they weren't, then we would probably be screwed and we would be forced to do it in a 2-year span. But I'm rambling. Sorry. Did that make any sense?
It absolutely does. And it brings me up to my point, Dan. Thanks for calling in. Thanks for jumping in. The one thing that I'll say, I wanted it to be a parting call now, but I think we're going to be rolling through a little bit later. But the one thing that I'll say in regards to Dane's point, the versatility of AVT is a perfect thing for this Jets offensive line. And I'm going to throw a name out here for you guys, and I think the Jets are going to be tied to him throughout this entire draft process. And if they can trade back into the second round and get him, they absolutely should. Christian Haynes, the guard from UConn, is a plug-and-play day-one starter for any team that drafts him. If the Jets were able to get Olu Fashanu and Christian Haynes in the first and second round, that is the equivalent of DeBrickashaw and Mangold back-to-back first and second round in 2006. That is almost the equivalent. I like Haynes more than I like some of these tackle prospects. I think he's phenomenal. And if you bring in a guy like Haynes and draft him in the second round, and you have him plug and play at right guard and AVT at right tackle, and you get Olu Fashanu at left, you can't tell me Jet fans aren't excited for that offensive line. Fashanu, Tomlinson, Tippmann, Haynes, and AVT. I'll see you guys in the playoffs. That's a great freaking offensive line. That would make me so excited as a fan. That would make me so excited. And I've been a little spoiled. I have been a little spoiled because I have arguably the best offensive line of the decade. I get it. I understand. I've seen Jordan Mailata become an all-pro. I've seen Landon Dickerson go from center to guard and it not mean a damn thing. I'm watching 2 Hall of Fame players at their position, and I am seeing Billy Bob Joe flip in and out at right guard, and it just not matter. I get it. I'm spoiled rotten when it comes to offensive linemen. I totally understand. But I'm getting goosebumps thinking about that. If the Jets were able to get up into the second round, draft Christian Haynes, and get Olu Fashanu, when Aaron Rodgers retires, that next quarterback is going to be well protected. Well protected. That's going to be awesome to watch. Awesome to watch. We will close it out here today, though, at 6:05. I got to make sure dinner's ready for the wife when she gets home. Appreciate all you guys for jumping on. If you like the show, make sure you like, subscribe, share, tweet, whatever you got to do. Get this thing up and running. Appreciate all of you guys that have stayed on for today and continue to watch. We'll be back on Friday at 5, same time, same place. We'll have a couple of other topics to discuss as we go into the Combine conversation. So appreciate all of you guys jumping on, and I will see you all